They thought they were too big to fail. They were catastrophically wrong. The year was 2008. The financial world was a tinderbox, and Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old titan of Wall Street, stood perilously close to the flame. Its collapse wasn't just a corporate bankruptcy. It was the seismic shock that ripped through the global economy, triggering a crisis from which many are still recovering. For decades, Lehman embodied the ambition and aggressive spirit of American finance. From its humble beginnings in Alabama selling cotton, it had navigated civil wars, panics, and depressions, always emerging stronger. But by the turn of the 21st century, a new breed of risk-taking, fueled by complex financial instruments, began to rewrite its destiny. Its foray into the subprime mortgage market, in particular, was a gamble of epic proportions. Like many of its peers, Lehman aggressively bought up mortgage-backed securities, believing the housing market would continue its upward trajectory indefinitely. This bet, however, would prove to be its undoing. By 2007, the cracks began to show. Foreclosures mounted, home prices plummeted, and the value of those intricate, highly leveraged mortgage-backed securities held by Lehman and countless others evaporated. The financial system, built on these shaky foundations, began to creak under the strain. A pivotal moment arrived in March 2008 with the near collapse of Bear Stearns, another major investment bank. The Federal Reserve, fearing a wider contagion, orchestrated a last-minute bailout, essentially strong-arming J.P. Morgan Chase into acquiring it. This move set a dangerous precedent, the expectation of a government safety net. Lehman's CEO, Richard Fuld, a man nicknamed the Gorilla for his fierce and unyielding demeanor, was desperately searching for a lifeline. He'd seen Bear Stearns rescued, and he believed Lehman, too, would be deemed too systemically important to fail. This belief, however, was a critical miscalculation. As the summer of 2008 wore on, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Lehman's stock price plummeted, losing nearly 75% of its value by early September. Rumors swirled, confidence eroded, and counterparties began to shy away from doing business with the struggling bank. The market was losing faith. Behind the scenes, the U.S. Treasury, led by Secretary Hank Paulson, and the Federal Reserve, under Ben Bernanke, were frantically trying to find a solution. They knew a Lehman collapse could be catastrophic, but they also faced intense political pressure against another taxpayer-funded bailout. The fateful weekend began on Friday, September 12, 2008. Investment bankers and government officials gathered at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, a fortress of finance, to hash out Lehman's fate. The atmosphere was thick with tension, exhaustion, and the smell of stale coffee. Their goal: find a buyer. Bank of America and Barclays emerged as potential suitors, but neither was willing to take on Lehman's toxic assets without government guarantees. The memory of the Bear Stearns bailout loomed large, but this time, the political will for a similar intervention was absent. As Saturday bled into Sunday, the talks became increasingly frantic. The clock was ticking. If a deal wasn't struck before markets opened on Monday, the consequences could be dire. Sleep-deprived negotiators huddled, spreadsheets open, phone calls ringing off the hook. At one point, British regulators reportedly blocked Barclays from acquiring Lehman, fearing the exposure to its toxic assets would destabilize the UK financial system. This move effectively extinguished the last viable private sector solution. By Sunday evening, the harsh reality set in. There would be no bailout. Treasury Secretary Paulson famously declared that the government wouldn't use taxpayer money to save Lehman. The moral hazard argument that bailouts encourage reckless behavior had won the day. At 1:45 a.m. on Monday, September 15, 2008, after a weekend of fruitless negotiations, Lehman Brothers filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, a staggering $619 billion in assets. The news sent shockwaves around the globe. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Trading floors erupted in panic. Global markets plunged. Credit markets, the lifeblood of the economy, froze. Businesses couldn't borrow, consumers couldn't spend, and the ripple effect spread like wildfire through interconnected financial systems. The government's decision not to bail out Lehman, while perhaps principled, had unintended consequences. The message it sent was that some institutions were expendable, creating an even greater sense of fear and uncertainty across the financial sector. Just days later, the Federal Reserve was forced to intervene with an $85 billion loan to save AIG, the massive insurance conglomerate, which was heavily exposed to credit default swaps. The irony was not lost on anyone. Lehman was allowed to fail, but AIG was deemed too crucial. The crisis quickly escalated into the Great Recession, a period of widespread economic hardship, job losses, and foreclosures. Millions lost their homes, their savings, and their sense of financial security. The human cost of the systemic collapse was immense. Looking back, the collapse of Lehman Brothers serves as a stark reminder of the interconnectedness of global finance and the dangers of unchecked risk-taking. It exposed the vulnerabilities within the system and the often difficult choices faced by policymakers during a crisis. The aftermath led to significant reforms, including the Dodd-Frank Act in the U.S., aimed at preventing a recurrence of such a crisis. Yet, debates continue about the effectiveness of these measures and whether the financial system is truly immune to future shocks. The legacy of Lehman Brothers isn't just a tale of corporate failure. It's a cautionary saga about ambition, hubris, and the delicate balance required to maintain stability in an increasingly complex financial world. It's a story that continues to resonate, shaping regulations and market psychology even today. It proves that even the most established giants can crumble under the weight of their own decisions, leaving behind a crater that impacts everyone. The lessons learned, or perhaps relearned, remain profoundly relevant. Next, we unravel the digital gold rush that turned into a pyramid scheme. Don't miss it.